Our next panelist, Mike Daigneault, first came to Alaska in 1994 to attend the University of Alaska Fairbanks with the expectation of only spending a few years here. I think that's a story familiar to many of us, myself included. 28 years later, he's proud to still call Alaska home. He's the Fish and Wildlife Service's Alaska Region Coordinator for Voluntary Habitat Restoration Programs and Partnerships, which he describes as his dream job. Please come on up here. You have the opportunity to work with a fine array of partners, including TU. We're very excited to have you here. I'll hand it off.
Great. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate it. So yeah, asked to cover some of the infrastructure funding opportunities through the Department of Interior. So just a little bit on terminology first. IIJA, BIL, we're throwing alphabet soup at you. They're the same thing, if you weren't sure about that. The Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. They are the same thing. So if you're talking about those, choose whichever one rolls off your tongue the best, but they are the same thing, okay? Then I, again, asked to talk about Department of Interior. Well, I work for the Fish and Wildlife Service. That is one bureau within the Department of Interior. So I have a little bit of information about those and a whole lot less about all the other opportunities. Matt Varner's smiling because he's representing another DOI agency that has also infrastructure funding coming here, and why he's not on this panel, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, so I will also apologize up front. This material is dense, okay? It's just gonna, we're gonna have to struggle through it. There are no fun field photos. There's no graphs of cool results. It's just dense. So if at all you feel like that, because there is lots of information out here about the infrastructure funding. There's lots of uncertainty about it. There's opportunities coming at us at the same time that seem to cover the same thing. So if at all you feel like that, this is just a moment of validation, because frankly, I feel like that a lot of times, and I'm in the middle of getting information directly from my agency, and I'm supposed to be one of the more informed people in the room, and that's how I feel, and trying to gather all of the information just to even present to you, this is what it felt like. So just be aware, if you feel like this, you are not alone. So the goal today, in my mind, is to take some of that chaos and bring some order to the world that we all are dealing with in the way of infrastructure funding and all of the opportunities that are there. So I want you to start thinking a little bit different mindset here. There are a number of themes overriding this funding source. They are very specifically to address climate resilience, environmental justice, and boosting local economies. So I want you, when you hear the word infrastructure, think conservation. You are not talking about the infrastructure law anymore. This is a conservation bill, and it is very much deeply rooted in all three of these overarching principles. So I mentioned Fish and Wildlife Service is a agency within DOI, right? So the Department of Interior has a ton of programs existing and otherwise that have funding lines through the infrastructure law. Some of them are applicable to the Matsu. I tried to circle a handful of them here. Many of these are ones that I frankly don't know a darn thing about, like Western Water or some of the water rights or wildland fire. That's just not in some of our skill set here. It's not something that, that we do a lot of work on. But I wanted to just identify that there are a ton of programs, a ton of funding, all coming through the Department of Interior in some shape or form. And I will try to highlight some of the ones that are most relevant to the partnership. So of that line item, or that box that was circled there, the ecosystem restoration funding, there are a number of line items underneath that. Many, again, which that may or may not apply here. You do see a number of topics of interest to the partnership, like invasive species, landscape scale restoration, voluntary ecosystem restoration. All these things are money that's coming through the department and have been, not all of them have gone out into sort of the public forum. Many of them are coming through existing programs and working through existing partnerships to put that money on the ground for the first fiscal year. And then there are going to be continued opportunities as time goes on. I wanted to just clarify one thing, like with a table like this, if you look at that funding line, that amount of money that's available is total over that 5-year period. There's nothing in the law specifically that says, agencies, you will do it this way and put all of your money, or do a 5-year average and put it out, one allotment per year for the next fiscal years. But it is a 5-year window for most of the funding, a total amount, and each agency and each funding stream is doing it slightly differently in that maybe a little bit more on the front end, maybe some are holding on to it and a little bit more on the back end. So it really just depends on each funding line. The one here I circled, I just wanted to highlight, and I'll talk a little bit about later, is that the Department of Interior chose, at least for the first year of this pot of money that's called Voluntary Ecosystem Restoration, is to take that allotment from this past fiscal year, give it to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and fund with other agency funding. We weren't the only funder, but fund the America the Beautiful Challenge that was organized through NIFWF. So if you're familiar with the America the Beautiful Challenge funding opportunity, that's where most of that funding came from, and I'll try to address some of that specifically later. So very specific to the Fish and Wildlife Service, this is the one line item funding through the bill that has the most relevance to what I do every day and a significant amount of relevance to what the partnership does. So it's a $200 million line item for 5 years, so average that out, about $40 million a year, but spread that out across the country. And so what we did in fiscal year 22 was we worked with all of you, all of our partners, to identify what we've been hearing about, like earlier today. What are the next highest priority fish passage projects that we need to address in Alaska? How can we actually bring those forward for a funding opportunity like this? And then they get judged based on the priorities of the program, which is habitat benefits and benefiting underserved communities and the support that it has in a partnership like this. So all of those things matter when you start talking about bringing a project into an opportunity like this for funding through the Infrastructure Investment Act. This, again, so we've heard lots of different numbers. Each each program is going to have its own funding requirements, its own match requirements. One thing with this program, because it came through an existing program, we already had a program policy of 1-to-1 of desired match. It's not required, but it is desired. It doesn't mean that you have to have that, but it's just something to keep in mind. So for this particular funding opportunity, what I would suggest is that you continue to talk to each other. That's what this is about. It's based on partnerships that we already have. It's the examples that you heard earlier with Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife Service, the Matsu Borough, people talking together, working together to identify what are those highest priority projects that need to get addressed next. And it's a funding opportunity that is much different than we would normally see through this program. For FY23, I did literally just check my email minutes ago to see this announcement is supposed to be coming out any day now for this next fiscal year. And when that comes out, it's a matter of being ready with your partners to put forward the best projects. Next one I wanted to just touch on that I mentioned, America the Beautiful Challenge. Again, administered through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, specifically looking at these large-scale, locally led projects for addressing different components of the administration's America the Beautiful initiative. A lot of, multiple different things here as far as who's eligible to apply. There was multiple priorities in there that states, territories, and tribes were allowed to apply to, and then there's a few other priorities that 501c3s and local government universities could apply to. So very different, and lots of, here's just, again, program priorities, lots of variability with match requirements, so it's just not, it's hard to try to describe this in any way that makes the most sense and that is like clear and understandable. So essentially keep in touch with your federal partners to understand what's coming next. We anticipate a similar opportunity in FY23. So 22 was closed in July, and that announcement of $91 million of projects that were awarded across the country just came out last week. I just wanted to mention this. I frankly don't know a ton about it other than the announcement that came out earlier this month on with $45 million of projects that were awarded through BIA, so a Department of Interior agency. But I'm not familiar with the process that they used or what those criteria are other than what's published on their website, and that website is here if you want to find out more. And I know that there are tribal partners in the room that have applied to this and or have already been awarded that. So if you want to try to uncover some more information about what that might look like from the standpoint of climate resilience for our tribal partners, please go ahead and talk with someone that has a little bit more familiarity with that. Federal highways. Is federal highways, did you miss something? Are they now part of the Department of Interior? No. But it is something that is so relevant to what the partnership does. I felt like I needed to have this in here for making sure folks were aware of this specific opportunity. So another confusing thing, right? It was appropriated for $1 billion over the 5 years. It was authorized for 4. So there's more space in there if they can figure out how to appropriate more money to it. So if you want to influence this process more, talk with your congressional representation and figure out how to actually authorize that full amount. $4 billion is a stinking lot of money, right? We're talking about a major investment very specifically in a program designed to replace culverts across the country. That is what this is about. Federal Highways does not have this program. They had to create this program. They have been working with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service as required by the infrastructure law to actually identify how were they going to deliver this money and how were they going to structure the program. That opportunity is on the street now. So if you're not aware of it, find it and or talk to me and I will get you a copy of it. It is currently open with proposals due in February. It is something, and you see the match requirements here. States and local government, 20%, tribes, none. That speaks to what Karen was talking about earlier. Work with your tribal partners and figure out how to actually get some of this work done on tribal lands. So one other quick thing here, just this is also other Department of Transportation as the lead agency for other funding opportunities. So there is a ton of other funding opportunities through the U.S. Department of Transportation. And you see some of them here, wildlife crossings, invasive plants. All of these have some level of connection to things that the partnership cares about. So you look at some of the funding amounts here, it just keeps adding up, right? These are things that are coming through not only DOI, through NOAA, through BLM, through other agencies, plus an agency like this. So there's more to uncover, and I have not seen any specific announcements for these, but you can guarantee that whenever any of this stuff comes out, it is my goal to make sure I get it to all of you as soon as possible with enough information behind it to help you understand what's coming next. So I just wanted to end with a number of Department of Interior resources that are out there, handful of websites, one that's Department of Interior, the other one specifically from the White House. And then my contact information, and again, if these, we'll make these slides available for folks, but there's just a ton coming. There's a lot more information that keeps swirling. There's a lot of uncertainty. Want to just know that for everyone, I am available to try to help make sense of all of it, and I'm trying to do that daily, and I will try to do that for you as well.